Story 1. I am homeless. I am Canadian. I have multiple sclerosis, but thanks to some very fortunate events and a YouTube channel, I am about to have a home within a couple of months. My moderators set up a GoFundMe for me. It is something I could not have accomplished on my own. I do not drink. I do not use drugs. That being said, I still feel a strong connection with others who live on the streets. Today is family day, so not much is open. I made my way into town to charge my devices. I did not realize the library was closed. When I arrived, I stopped at Mr. Sub and grabbed a sandwich before heading to the library. Upon discovering it was closed, I had to find another place to charge my electronics. I went to a N.W. Once there, I bought a coffee, a burger, and onion rings. I was not hungry, I had just eaten, but I figured I would have a snack while waiting. I nibbled on the onion rings and sipped my coffee while my devices charged. I had been there for about 15 to 20 minutes when I noticed a man outside rummaging through the garbage. He was disheveled. His shoes were too large, and I could see his bare feet inside them. We had just had a heavy snowfall, and it was freezing outside. He was clearly unprepared for the cold. Beyond that, it was evident that he was struggling with severe mental illness. He eventually stepped inside the restaurant, drawn in by the music playing over the speakers. The theme song from A Night at the Roxbury was playing, and he started dancing to it. He approached me and tried to talk, but I had difficulty understanding him. Whether due to his mental illness or another condition, his speech was unclear. Still, I was able to piece together what he wanted. He was hungry. That much was obvious, given that he had just been searching through the trash before coming up to me. Luckily for him, I had only picked at my onion rings and was already full from the sandwich I had eaten earlier. I gave him a nod, reached for the bag containing the burger, and handed it to him. His face lit up with a huge smile. He sat down, unwrapped the burger, and started eating. Unfortunately, as soon as he did, the restaurant staff reacted immediately. They all came out from the back and told us we had to leave right away. I was confused. What's going on? I'm just drinking my coffee, and he's eating a burger. Sure, I might not have smelled the best. It had been snowing a lot, and I had not had access to a shower for about 3 days, which I was not happy about, but I kept myself as clean as possible. The man did not smell bad at all. One of the staff members raised his voice at me, saying we did not belong there. He made some pretty rude comments toward me. To be fair, I was not exactly polite in return. I was furious. Actually, I was more than just mad. It was -14 degrees Celsius outside. This man had barely any protection against the cold. He had just sat down to eat a simple meal, and they were trying to force him back out into freezing temperatures. He did not even have socks on. I felt terrible for him. Now, I will admit where I was in the wrong. I got upset. I raised my voice. I called them some unpleasant names, perhaps more than I should have. They wagged their fingers at me and told me to get out. I snapped. Fine, I'll just go to another store. And yes, I may or may not, though mostly may have thrown my half-finished, lukewarm coffee against the window before storming out, letting out a string of choice words as I left. The man ended up leaving too. I still could not fully understand what he was saying, but I gestured for him to come with me. We walked to a nearby Tim Horton, where I got him to sit down. I bought us both a coffee, got him a bagel with cream cheese, and made sure he had something extra to eat. But I don't know, was I in the wrong? Maybe I do not belong in places like restaurants. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. Story 2. So I work in a call center for a major telecom operator, let's call them MJ, in my country. Now my job is quite simple and easy. I call newly subscribed customers and ask them how installation was done to their liking, and the contract is like they asked for. Now this customer, let's call them Maria. Maria is a new customer and is on my list to call. She got a pretty awesome package of service for a great price, plus a free 32-inch TVH, 1 month free service and free sports channels for 12 months, and I gotta call her. Hi, my name is X. I am calling from MJ about your recent subscription to our service, and it's to make sure you are happy with the service. Maria, oh hello, I am very happy. It's better than major telecom. Why, but my daughters aren't. They don't have enough internet on their cell phones. Okay, let's check your daughter's cell phone plan. I see here both your daughters have 10 gigabytes for normal navigation, plus 15 gigabytes for social networks, 5 gigabytes for YouTube and gigabytes for Netflix. Could you tell me where they are lacking internet? I think it was Facebook. I see. Your daughters were using around 10 gigabytes of mobile data on WhatsApp and 5 gigabytes on Facebook, so to make you even happier, I will apply 5 more gigabytes, free of charge for 24 months of contract. Does that sound good? Now this extra 5 gigabytes I am giving out of free will and is not company policy, but they gave my job a free use policy to make the customer happy as long as it is responsible and not abusive and doesn't affect the value of the contract. I don't think 5 gigabytes is enough. Make it 20 gigabytes. I am sorry, Miss Maria, I am not able to do that. Using 15 gigabytes in just 1 week in Facebook and WhatsApp is bit much. What I can do, if this not you liking, is make both you daughters number unlimited mobile data for just €10 extra a month for both phones. It's a special offer. Does this sound better? Now this offer is my using the policy to make customers happy and for me to go to bed for the day and already cleared with my supervisor if I could apply this offer. I would like to pay the same, but unlimited internet for 10 more euros sounds good for the happiness of my little angels. Alright, your contract has been changed, and both your daughters will have the new data plan activated in around 1 hour. Sounds great. So how are you going to refund me for the time I didn't have this contract? I am sorry. What refund? Is your service not working correctly? It is, but before I hadn't had unlimited, and I had to listen to my daughter's complaint that they didn't have internet on the cell phone, and I would like to have a refund on my first bill. I was in shock with this, so it took me a moment to get my lines in order. So your service was great. There wasn't a problem with the service, and you want a refund for 1 week for a bad contract that wasn't aligned with your use case? At this point, I was going to give her €10 just so I could go to bed, and my work doesn't pay extra hours, even though we go over the work hours on a regular basis, but we got bank hours to use when we miss work, so evens out. Maria, don't be silly. I want the whole month, obviously. Miss Maria, that's not possible. It was a high usage of mobile data from your daughters. The company provided the service as it was in the contract. Well, if you can't find it to make me happy on this request, I am afraid I will have to cancel your contract. Miss Maria, just to make sure, you want to cancel your contract with our company because we won't give you free month service, although you already have 1 month free. That is correct. Doesn't your supervisor say the customer is always right? I am sorry, Miss Maria. I can't give you another free month on top of your already free month, for the reason that we gave the service that you contacted. Do you still wish to cancel your service? Yes, I am. Also, I would like your name and company ID to make a complaint about you being so bad with customers. I will connect your call with the Department of Cancellation, and my name is X, and as for company ID, I can't provide that information as it is private. I am sorry. I want your company ID before you transfer the call. I am sorry, company ID can't be provided to customers. Only the name and time of call is needed to make the complaint to the correct person. It states so on our website. Just transfer the call so that your colleague will comply with my request. You are good for nothing. I am going to transfer the call. The call was transferred and my colleague was having none of it and just started canceling the contract before talking to the customer. I read the internal report on the situation as there was a formal complaint. The action of both me and my colleague was fine, but I should have not offered unlimited internet for €5 each phone, but should have been €6. Contract was cancelled. Miss Maria lost all offers, and best of all, the client had to pay €500 for early termination fee and €320 for installation of service. Story 3. I was 16, riding the city bus home from school in the middle of winter. Besides myself, there was the driver and 2 other passengers, both adult men. One sat near the front, the other sat in the middle side seats, and I was in the back left corner. We were a few blocks away from the depot, where I needed to switch buses, when we were T-boned by a car that ran a stop sign. The impact caused me and the dude sitting in the side seat to fly forward. But luckily for me, I grabbed onto the handrail for standing passengers and was able to swing myself to the seat in front of me, though the jerking sensation wasn't pleasant. The driver had the airbags go off on him, and the other passenger was saved by the seat in front of him. The guy that went flying landed near the front of the bus and was more shocked than hurt, thankfully. I, too, was in shock, so I wasn't feeling any pain or dizziness at that time. Now, before this happened, this was a typical day for me. I had been riding the city bus to and from school for about 3 years, because my mom was a single mother who worked overtime, 5 a.m. to 5 p.m., though her normal work hours were 7 to 2. On this particular day, my mom needed to get off work early for her to take care of something at the bank. She made a point all week to tell me, "I'm not going to pick you up from school." Which I didn't ask, but she just liked, I don't know, making me feel like she had more important things than me going on. Anyway, I was already planning on taking my usual route home. Well, after the accident, a female police officer showed up, and because I was a minor, she couldn't question me without my mom present, despite me insisting my mom would waive her right to be there. The following is the conversation I had with my mom on the phone in front of the officer. Mom, in an annoyed tone. What? I'm already on my way to the bank. Me. Yeah, about that. There is nothing that will stop me from going to the bank today. This is important. Yeah, so there was an accident. This isn't funny. Side note. My mom said the same thing to her father the night he died when he had a shortness of breath. Mom, I'm being serious. I was on the bus, near the station, and we got T-boned. At this point, the officer could tell that I wasn't getting anywhere with my mom, and asked if she could take my phone. Police officer. Hi, ma'am, this is Officer X, and I need to ask your daughter what happened, and I cannot do that without her mother present. I'm guessing my mother was insisting she didn't need to be there. Ma'am, your daughter was involved in a pretty bad accident, and with car accidents, sometimes the effects aren't immediately apparent, so you need to come get your daughter in case she needs medical attention. The officer nods her head and returns the phone back to me. Me. Yeah? I am not happy about this. I'm on my way. Do you feel fine? Yeah, I think so. Just shook up a little. Then we're going straight to the bank. I don't have time for this nonsense. Okay, see you soon. My mom shows up 3 minutes later, and the officer asks me what happened, to which I couldn't really answer. I was looking out of the opposite window listening to, and I won't forget, Pumping Up the Party by Hannah Montana. Haven't listened to it since. After I give my statement, the officer asks me, again, how I'm feeling. I tell her the same, in shock. She turns to my mother and implores her to immediately take me to the hospital if I start feeling woozy, dizzy, nauseated, or have any sort of aches and pains. My mom basically waved her hand and said, yeah, and off to the bank we went. Sure enough, the second we sat down to wait, the nausea and spinning kicked in. I suffer from motion sickness already, but this was like when you take a pain pill that's too strong, and you feel like you want to die. My mom, the unsympathetic person she was, told me to suck it up and stop acting like I don't even know what she said. People would walk by us and ask if I was okay, and she'd tell them I was overreacting. When we got into the banker's office, even he was like, I don't feel comfortable assisting you when your daughter looks like she needs medical attention. My mom didn't bother telling anyone what just happened to me, and I was so dizzy and dazed, I couldn't speak for myself. Thank God that banker put his foot down and told her to come back the next morning. Of course, my mom had a Karen fit, and the banker basically gave her the option of him calling Child Protective Services and the police and not finishing helping her, or she could come back tomorrow morning. Either way, he wasn't going to help her until I was taken to the doctor. I don't think we got out of there fast enough. At this point, the bank was closed, and we were the last ones in there. I think we were there for almost 2 hours by the time we left. We finally get to the ER, I get X-rays and a bunch of other tests. Sure enough, I had a neck sprain and severe whiplash. This all happened on a Friday, so I was called out of school until Wednesday the following week. I couldn't turn my neck for about a month, and I couldn't sit at a desk for the longest time. My teachers, thankfully, were sympathetic and had no problem lending me their desks during class, since teachers always have the comfy chairs. My classmates were also helpful. I don't think I carried my own bag for that entire time either. The funniest part about this story is how my sensei, Japanese language teacher, told my classmates I was hit by a bus. So when I came back on Wednesday, everyone looked at me like I came back from the dead. Even until I graduated, people would ask me if I got hit by a bus. I felt like Regina George, and it was hilarious to me. But the fact that my mom couldn't care about my well-being because her bank appointment was more important still baffles me to this day. She suffered the same situation when I was a baby and when I was in 2nd grade, and I remember how for years after her accidents, she always brought them up. When I'm finally in the same situation, I'm just faking it. Makes me wonder how much she faked to just assume everyone else was faking. Story 4. So today, I went shopping at a second-hand shop downtown, just looking for some new clothes since autumn is about to set in and I get cold really easily. I live in northern Norway, so it gets real cold. I had my cart and found a nice yellow skirt, a pair of shoes and a warm sweater as I was walking around the shop minding my own business. I went into the changing room to try them out, and, pleased to have found something my size, strolled out of there about to go to the register when I saw a nice pair of black and white striped pants and stopped to look at them. Behind me comes an entitled woman and taps me hard on the shoulder. I have my headphones in, so I take them off and turn to her. "I want that sweater," Karen tells me. "Ooh, what sweater?" I look around, but there's only the pants stand and some sports clothes nearby. "The sweater in your cart. I want it. It fits me better than it fits you, and it doesn't look good with your complexion." I was so confused at this point. I need to say that I'm so pale. We've only really had 2 days of summer with really warm weather this year, and when that happens I usually sit outside with my comic books to soak in the sun. And my family on my dad's side are a bunch of redheads, so I don't get tan, I get burning red and a ton of freckles. Also, the sweater was purple, which actually fits my complexion. I'm sorry, but this was the only sweater I found that was my size. I'm a size 42/44 XL. This woman was like XS, and it would probably look like a tent on her. Well, I saw it first, so it belongs to me. Give it to me, now. This woman had been there longer than me, and had browsed through all the clothes on the stand where I found this pretty sweater, but she had just scrolled right past it. "I'm sorry, but it's already in my cart, and I'm gonna buy it." I start walking away from this crazy lady, but she grabs the back of my dress, violently pulling me back so I almost fall backwards, and snatches the sweater from my cart. Me, absolutely hating confrontation, but having fallen in love with this sweater, tried to pull it back when she put it in her cart. She screeched, "Stop stealing from my cart, you thief! I found this first." The shop is pretty much empty, it's just 2 more customers who were busy browsing, but have now turned their attention towards us. A girl from the register, cashier girl, comes over. "What's going on?" I used to work here about a year back, so she knows me. Me, almost in tears because I'm so over the say. I found this sweater and was about to go buy it when this woman snatched it from my cart. I did not. She stole it from me. She took it from my cart and I just took it back. This woman is still screeching with her nose turned up like she's the most important person in the world. The cashier girl sighs. It's almost closing time and she's had a long day. She turns to another customer nearby, an old lady, probably 70, who had kept a close eye on the situation, when the old woman clears her voice and speaks up. She keeps her 2-meter distance because of the recent, 60th big COVID outbreak in my small city. Excuse me. I saw the whole thing. The young lady is right. She had it in her cart and Karen first grabbed her and then took the sweater out of her cart. The cashier girl turns back to me and Karen, her hands on her hips. This is not a woman who backs down from confrontational situations. I noticed from that one time she had to kick another woman out because she was yelling at people of color to speak Norwegian. You're in Norway. The cashier girl then told Karen, "You need to give that back or I'll be forced to kick you out." But it's mine. "Oh, you want security? I'll call them, then." This got the woman to begrudgingly throw the sweater on the floor and kick it in my direction, like she was a 5-year-old having a temper tantrum, and promptly leaving the store. I turned to the cashier girl and we smiled slightly at each other. We both knew there's no security in this small shop. The closest are the burly dudes who take care of storage and picking stuff up from the Salvation Army boxes around town. But the police station is 2 blocks away. The cashier girl picks up the sweater from the floor, brushes off some dirt and follows me to the register. She gave me half off on the sweater. I paid and thanked her and the old woman who had stood up for me. Outside, in the parking lot, the woman was standing, as if she was waiting for me to get out. But she didn't do anything because one of the storage guys was just outside the building on his smoke break. I just smiled smugly at her and left. Didn't really believe people like this existed, especially not in my small 25K resident town. But here we are. I hope they take Karen's picture from the security cams and block her from entering the shop again, because I'm there basically every week. Story 5. Hey guys, first time I witnessed a wild Karen myself, so I am excited to share it. So, because of the ongoing pandemic, I decided to vaccinate myself at one of the vaccination centers in my country. I finally got 2 appointments, first and second shot, at a center for the Moderna vaccine, and the first appointment was actually pretty normal, besides joint pain for 2 days. Side note, if you register for the vaccination at a center, you get 2 appointments with a fixed time. That is something like a doctor's appointment, so you should be on time. Also, the vaccination centers are staffed with military people who do not mess around. The atmosphere there was more like a sign-up for the military than a doctor's appointment, so at my second appointment I had to wait outside the center at first because they were on lunch break, so I spent some time on my phone browsing through Reddit. After they said that you can now enter the building, I noticed a wild Karen behind me in the queue with the typical 2 sizes too small shirt, leggings, sandals, yes, with socks, and the stereotypical haircut with sunglasses. Notice, the building was not well lit, which she actually took off after a few minutes. At first you have to show your confirmation for the appointment as well as your health insurance card. Then you proceed to the registration, then an educational talk, then confirmation by a doctor, then you get your shot. So you really got passed from one guy to the next there, and everybody except the docs were in camo with their respective military badges on them. So I just got through the registration and Karen was next, while I sat down waiting to be processed to the educational talk. When I heard through the makeshift walls that Karen had missed her appointment the day before and demanded to get a shot now. The military guy tried to argue that normally she had to make a new appointment, but since it wasn't as crowded, she would be allowed to get it. She got through and sat down on another chair waiting to be called. Now, there is also staff keeping track of who came in when and who is the next to be processed. And they are really careful with that to make sure nobody cuts the line. Well, not technically a line, but you get the idea. So as soon as the door opened to the educational talk, Karen immediately stood up and tried to stomp in. When the guard watching over the waiting area stops here with his hand and yells with no warning, "Sit back down, it is not your turn." Karen tried to have none of it, but got professionally ignored by the guard while he motioned to the one who was next to enter the room. Karen nearly started a fit stating that she needs to be next because she supposedly has very important things to do after the shot. Yeah, who doesn't? The guard was not having it and stated his ultimatum: either sit down and wait or leave. Last warning. She just huffed up and sat down. with the expression of held-back anger in her face. She tried this in every waiting area for each of the aforementioned stations, just to sit back down and wait because of the employed military having none of her attitude. While I was waiting my 15 minutes observation time after the shot, which is mandatory in case you have side reactions, I saw her leaving the vaccination booth and sitting down in the area clearly so mad and looking at her wristwatch waiting. I thought, okay, this time she holds herself together, and thought that was the end of it. Well, I was both right and wrong at the same time. She didn't make a scene in the way Karen would make, but in the way a dying goose would make. Because apparently, she did not tolerate the vaccine that well. You could clearly see her face going from a bright red to a pale yellowish green as she raised a hand and yelled with despair in her voice for the medic. Two guys built like the Hulk had to drag her to the medic booth because she nearly fainted and vomited into the next bin. Final thoughts. Looking back now, I have to somewhat congratulate Karen, but not because of her ugly behavior, but because she decided to get a vaccine. But that is everything positive I have to say about her. Oh, and besides pain in the arm from the shot, I was fine and am looking forward to dropping rates of the corona cases. I hope you'll all be well and thanks for reading. Story 6. In September 2023, a female, 30s, moved into a 3-bedroom house in Los Angeles and signed the lease with my roommate, whom we'll call Sandy, female, 30s. We were both tenants on the lease, but Sandy was designated as the primary renter. The lease did not specify what that meant or give her any special rights, but the landlord, whom we'll call Judy, insisted on communicating and receiving payment only through Sandy. This will be important later. The house had a large room with an en-suite bathroom, a smaller room, and a detached outside room. Sandy decided the rent split would be $1, $200/$1, $800, with me paying $800 for the detached room and her paying $1,000. At the time, Sandy was unemployed and struggling to make rent. She came to me and said the rent split was unfair, that she had made a mistake, and that my room had been priced too low. She insisted that the split should be $1, $200/$900/$900, which would lower her share and increase mine. I was too trusting and agreed, thinking that being kind would be reciprocated. In hindsight, that was a mistake. Up until July 2024, we had 2 subtenants occupying the largest room, each paying $1,200. However, my best friend, whom we'll call Mariah, female, 20s, was leaving a difficult relationship and needed a place to stay. Mariah moved in during July 2024, but before doing so, she mentioned that she couldn't afford the $1,200 rent for the large room. Sandy then proposed a new arrangement. She would move into the large room, Mariah would take her smaller room, and I would remain in my detached room. We would each pay $1,000 since Sandy also couldn't afford $1,200, even though by this point she had secured a job. I told her I didn't like this plan and offered an alternative split of $1, $100/$1, $900, but she refused. I reluctantly agreed for the time being, with the understanding that we would renegotiate later. It's important to note that we had no written contract detailing who paid what, just a verbal agreement. The issues with Sandy. At first, Sandy and I were friends, but over time, her negative traits started to wear on me. I was determined to maintain a peaceful household, but by summer 2024, I had reached my limit. She constantly interrupted me, made my girlfriend uncomfortable, dominated every conversation, and even made Mariah feel uneasy. For example, one time she made lentil soup and was very insistent that I try it. I told her I was allergic to lentils, which should have been the end of the discussion. However, Sandy asked what my reaction would be, and when I explained, she dismissed it, saying, "That's not that bad, just take a bite and then take an antihistamine." She pressured me repeatedly, and when I refused, she acted as if she were personally offended. Another time, after my birthday, she asked how old I was. I'm certain she already knew, but I responded vaguely, saying, "I'm old now, haha." Most people would take that as a sign to drop the subject, but not Sandy. She kept pushing me to say my exact age. Her pressuring, anxiety, constant complaints about avoidant men, and never-ending need to talk eventually wore me down. I started distancing myself, keeping conversations short and limiting interactions. I felt bad about it. So in November 2024, I sent her a text explaining my distance. I told her it was hard for me to say, but I believed she had a good heart. I mentioned the interrupting and the ways she made me feel uncomfortable, but reassured her that we could work through it. When we discussed it in person, she seemed receptive. She talked about going to therapy, and we even hugged. However, after a few weeks with no noticeable effort to change, I continued keeping my distance. She grew impatient and texted me, saying that I was making the house uncomfortable and needed to fix this. She blamed me for her loneliness, the holidays, and further conflict. At Christmas, the three of us went to buy a Christmas tree, but once again, Sandy dominated the entire experience, interrupting me repeatedly. She didn't have the money to pay for her share of the tree, so I covered it $50. I walked away from her for most of the time, trying to enjoy the moment despite the tension. Mariah and I both got Sandy a Christmas gift. She got us nothing. For at least a week after Christmas, our gifts sat untouched, with no acknowledgement from her. On New Year's Eve, right before Mariah and I went out, Sandy confronted me, saying she wanted to start the new year on a good note, and insisted I stop being distant. Frustrated, I asked, "Then why haven't you paid me back the $50? Why have you ignored our gifts?" The lease drama. Here's where things took a serious turn. We started having meetings to resolve issues in the house, including the unfair rent split. Nothing was resolved. On January 14th, I texted her, saying we needed another meeting to discuss the rent situation. Then, on February 4th, right after Mariah and I had paid rent, we received a text from Sandy informing us that she would be taking over the lease as the sole tenant in April and that we needed to find a new place to live. Shortly after, I received an email from Judy, the landlord, stating that she and Sandy had spoken on January 28th, and Judy had decided to terminate our month-to-month lease. I immediately responded, telling Judy I had never agreed to this and was completely unaware of what was happening. I told her I would be happy to sign a new lease. Judy replied, saying she was moving forward with the termination and cited a clause in the lease giving her the right to do so. I started researching and discovered that our property was protected under Los Angeles Rent Stabilization Ordinance. This meant that Judy needed just cause to terminate the lease even a month-to-month one. I emailed Judy to inform her of this, but she dismissed my concerns. The truth comes out. We had a meeting with Sandy, and she claimed this was Judy's decision. However, I suspected that Sandy had spoken negatively about Mariah and me to Judy, and that they had conspired to force us out. I was right. I sent a firm email to Judy, reiterating that we were protected under the ordinance and that she should seek legal counsel before proceeding, as she might be breaking the law. I had consulted with a lawyer who confirmed that she was indeed violating tenant rights. Judy then backtracked, canceling the lease termination and revealing the truth: Sandy had requested the termination. Shortly after, Sandy texted the group, apologizing for being dishonest. Legal action. At this point, Judy became hostile, claiming I had threatened her and accusing us of violating the lease by not properly informing her of Mariah's sublease. She also refused to let me pay her directly, insisting that payments go through Sandy, despite there being no such requirement in the lease. This was harassment and retaliation, so I filed several complaints with the Los Angeles Housing Department. An investigator was assigned to my case. I told Sandy to cancel her request, and she did. However, I made it clear that there would be no peace in the house until she apologized for trying to evict us and agreed to pay her fair share of the rent, wanting $200. She had the largest room with an en-suite bathroom, owned 2 cats and a large dog, the only pets in the house, was the only one using the parking spot. Mariah and I didn't have cars, and of the $4,500 security deposit, I had paid $3,000. She refused to apologize or pay more, so I informed her that I would take her to small claims court to recover the back rent I had overpaid. She countered by saying she would sue me for breach of contract despite there being no written contract. I filed the lawsuit, and my friend served her the next day. She cried on the porch, saying, "This is so extreme." I offered to drop the case if she agreed to sign a contract outlining rent responsibilities. She has yet to respond. So, chat, would you say my roommate is entitled?